Alright, so I'm here to talk to you about map tiles and how they are dead and how you should only use vector tiles because vector tiles are amazing and we have a lot to talk about. The clicker doesn't work. Oh, that's the other way. Okay, so briefly, what is a map tile, right? So this is a map, you probably know what that looks like. Maps generally, in a lot of senses, are made up of lots of little tiles, right? So somebody took all of the data for, say, LA County, and they figured out what it would look like, what all the roads would look like, and all of the labels would look like, and all the zoom levels. And this is how you make a map, right? It pulls in all the little images and assembles it for you. So this lets you do really crazy things with like large amounts of data. So this is 1 dot per person, 2010 census data, and colored by race. And trying to send all of this data to somebody's computer to map on the fly would probably crash their computer. Your internet connection would never work. So what they did was they pre-rendered it, right? And they sent it over as images. And in this way, they can actually display a map the way they want to at any level without sending all that data to you. This is great. There's just one problem. It takes forever to render all of these tiles. And the more zoom levels you have, the longer it's going to take you. And the more detail you want, the longer that's going to take you. And so is there any way out of this? Because every time you want to make a change, you have to re-render everything. That sucks. I bought a really, really expensive computer to render tiles, and I don't need it anymore. So what is a vector tile? They're data, right? So like think of them as like little pieces of GeoJSON. So imagine you take a giant data set, like every census tract in the US, and you slice it into little squares for each zoom level, and each square only contains the data in that area. But you might be thinking, that's still all of the data, Ken, you've just sliced it up, right? But then every single one is simplified at different zoom levels, because you don't need all of the detail at all of the zoom levels. So when you're looking at a map of the United States, you don't need to know every twist and turn of I-95, you just need to know the general sort of direction of it. So vector scale also, you don't need a vector tile for every zoom level, so when you zoom into a map, think about scalable vector graphics, right, like SVGs. If you have a point here and a point here, you zoom in, it just kind of stretches that for you. So the way you do this, right, is you take data, like all of the census tracts, and you run it through a program that I like to use called Tippecanoe. It's a tiling joke. It renders all of the data, it simplifies all of your data, all of the zoom levels, in an intelligent way. You can actually control how it does it, which is important for something I'll show you later. And it slices it up into little pieces for you. And then you serve that up with a little program called Tessera. There are other ones like Tile Live Vector. You might think you don't want to serve stuff up. Didn't we get away from that? We started doing like flat stuff for everything, but you can put it behind varnish and it caches like HTML or JSON, and you can serve a lot of data without really worrying too much. So this is just an example of simplification, right? So on one side you'll see like an image tile, right? This is quite LA. And on the other side you'll see what if you requested the vector data for that. That's all of the data actually in that tile compressed in a really amazing way. So you can do things with this like, so this is a dot density map I made of renters versus owning in the United States. And this is actually just a big chopped up data file served to you through vector files. And this lets you do cool things. Like, if you're doing this, it kind of just zooms in and scales magically, and you can kind of see how the tiles sort of scale and then change, and it provides like a much nicer effect. This is another thing that we did. Like, this is every pool in LA County, and like trying to serve this up as one big GeoJSON file would be really big. So actually, if you took this screenshot I took and you zoomed in, you would see that a lot of these shapes are actually just like blended together, or they're like much smaller than, much more simplified than what you would otherwise see. And as you zoom in, you can actually zoom in on every single individual square, which is maybe kind of creepy, I don't know. And this is another thing that I did, right? This is every street sweeping sign in New York City, and this is Brooklyn, which a lot of you probably recognize. And this actually dynamically changes. So the really neat thing about vector tiles is you render them on the fly. You tell it how to render it when the data comes in. So I don't have to pre-render all of these tiles. I can tell it to change dynamically, and I don't have to render different data sets for everything. So if you want to use vector tiles, right, you can generate the data yourself. Mapbox has a metered vector tile service that will provide like base maps for you, which lets you zoom in really kind of amazing ways, but you have to pay at some point, and that's not fun. And MapZen actually has a free vector tile service that you can use, and you can make all sorts of like crazy maps that way. Thanks.